This was something that was very exciting. We thought this would be the first country. He's a great leader. Mohammed's a great leader. And we're very happy that he was the first country, I would say. And you're going to see many other things happening in the Middle East over a fairly short period of time. But this is the first time in more than 25 years. And UAE is big stuff. UAE is very powerful, very strong,
Do you know when
has one of the strongest militaries. It's big stuff.
Do you know when the delegations are going to meet specifically?
Very soon. I guess they'll be setting up the meetings. Do you have any time?
I think the next several weeks, Mr. President. And then we expect that there will be a meeting here at the White House with the leaders.
There'll be an official signing at the White House over the next few weeks. Okay? And other than that, we'll meet you at 5:30 or so. We'll talk and we'll actually take one of your questions. Okay?
All right, guys.
There you have it, the president announcing a new U.S. negotiated deal between Israel and the United Arab Emirates to resume or to establish full diplomatic relations, a peace deal, if you will. I want to bring in Ben Tracy, who is at the White House. Ben, you've been listening to this press conference. This is sort of I would say, you know, a needed win for the president, as he has just, you know, 80 days or so before the election. And when he was elected into office, there was much talk about hammering out, bringing peace to the Middle East. And then we just sort of didn't hear much after that. Some highlights here and there, but nothing major. So this is a pretty significant announcement.
It is, and you know, you're right. The president's facing some pretty stiff domestic headwinds as he goes into re-election, both with coronavirus and the impact on the economy. And as often happens for presidents when they're in trouble at home, they look for wins abroad. And certainly this would be one for the president. This is a pretty big deal, you know, for the United Arab Emirates to now recognize Israel, which is not something it had done before, for them to have full diplomatic relations. I believe this is the first agreement of this kind for Israel since 1994, when they signed a peace deal with Jordan. So this is very significant. And part of what is driving this is, you know, this did not come out of the blue. The president said this is something they've been working on for a long time now. And in fact, relations between the two countries have been growing more warm over the course of several years. And part of that is they do have a shared interest. They have a shared interest in their opposition to Iran's nuclear program and Iran's growing influence in the region. So it makes sense strategically for these two countries now to come together. And you heard the president kind of tease the idea that there might be other agreements of this kind in the region between Israel and its neighbors. And a lot of that is to kind of hedge against the influence of Iran in their neighborhood.
That is actually quite fascinating. He also sort of brought up the idea of America achieving energy independence in relation to this. Can you sort of shed a little more light on that?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting to hear the president say we no longer need to be there, meaning we don't have to be in the Middle East anymore because we don't need your oil. That is not something American presidents, for the most part in the past, have acknowledged so bluntly in terms of the reason that we're there is because we need your oil. The president is saying because of domestic production here in the United States, we don't actually have to be there for our energy needs. We are there now as a friend to help solve some of the problems in the Middle East. Of course, one of the big problems in the Middle East does go back to Iran, and the relationship between President Trump and the Iranian regime is not at all a good one. So that is something that still needs to be solved. But we should not gloss over this too quickly, because one of the big points in this is that Israel has apparently agreed to suspend its annexation of land in the West Bank, home to many of the Palestinians. And if that is indeed the case, and if they indeed do follow through on that, that could be opening the door ever so slightly for renewed talks between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And those talks have really been on ice for quite a while now.
I think that's a really, really interesting observation. I know we're going to talk to Dan Raviv, but of course, you know, when it comes to these sort of agreements, there are so many different players in the region that one has to consider the impact, of course, for the U.S. Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu who has had a tough go of things in terms of his ability to maintain sort of his position in Israel. There's several elections trying to determine whether or not he he indeed would remain in office, obviously facing allegations of corruption and all sorts of other things. And then there are the other countries in the region that are watching this. Have we heard at all from any of the countries in the region reacting to this announcement?
I have not seen any reaction yet. Obviously, we're just hearing this within the last couple of minutes, so there certainly will be reaction throughout the day, and it'll be interesting to see what the other countries in the neighborhood do. But you mentioned Netanyahu, and certainly the close relationship between President Trump and Netanyahu would have been a driver behind this. You also heard the president give quite a bit of credit, or at least as much credit as President Trump likes to give to other people, to his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who part of his vast portfolio here at the White House has been the broad idea of Middle East peace. So certainly this is something that he has been working on. You also heard President Trump joke that he thinks this should be called the Donald J. Trump Accord. He was clearly joking in the moment. I can tell you that this apparently is officially going to be called the Abraham Accords. It won't have President Trump's name on it.
Yeah, you know what they say about jokes, though? There's always a little nugget of truth in there. All right, thank you so much, Ben, for jumping in front of the camera so quickly.